The Columbia Board of Realtors was founded in 1944 as the Columbia Real Estate Board. And although it represented the first organized effort on behalf of realtors for the area, it was in reality simply an extension of a long history of development in our community. This is their story, or at least a version of it.
Back when the only thing that passed through central Missouri was the prevailing southwest breeze and an occasional Osage hunting party, no one gave much thought to what the future might hold. But that all changed when French trappers came in search of valuable fur, and Lewis and Clark made their way up the meandering Missouri River on their way to immortality. Still, what was to become Boone County was nothing more than a distant thought, until about 1820, when the first permanent settlers picked out a patch of level ground and declared it home. For most of those early years, Columbia was little more than a sleepy outpost on the Boone Slick Trail. The community sat close by a stream Native Americans called the Hinky Sun, or Little Murky. By the middle part of the century, pioneer land speculators were fueling new development, and unbridled growth was becoming a thorn in the side of early Columbians. A letter from trapper and wheelwright Willis McCormick to his brother in Virginia tells the tale of increasing pressures and the stresses created by a burgeoning population.
It sure ain't like it used to be when you was here. I believe you'd hardly recognize this place. Folks are everywhere I turn. Well, last week I had to stand in line at the trading post. Don't know from where all these newcomers hail. Change is happening fast. There's foolish talk of paving the trail between here and the tavern.
Following the Civil War, one resident wrote that carpetbaggers and land speculators from back east descended on Columbia like a flock of birds making a mess wherever they roost. Soon after, homes and shops of all kinds began to spring up along the dirt path the locals called the Broadway. There was even talk of a downtown trolley. Growing pains from an ever-increasing population were felt in every facet of the community, even the school. School teacher Maud Gum wrote of the challenges of overcrowding in a letter to her sister back in Peoria.
Dearest Sarah, the classroom is crowded with students, and the new arrivals are unruly. Discipline and decorum are lacking, and administrators seem out of touch. By the turn of the new century, our school will likely be so crowded, we'll need to add one of those newfangled log trailers to handle the overflow. Oh, when will it end?
A new century dawned, and throughout the nation, technological advancement was all the rage. But the enthusiastic voices for progress were countered by those who declared modern technology a Pandora's box of darker days ahead. Otto Schminke of the Columbia, Missouri Herald bemoaned these advances in a September 1905 editorial.
Much has been said lately about the recent licensing of 2 horseless carriages in our fair city. But, mark my words, if these noisy, smoke-belching demons proliferate on our streets, you will behold such an accumulation of exhausted smoke in our skies that temperatures might someday warm on a countywide, nay, global scale.
Following first one, then the Second World War, local residents braced for a possible tidal wave of growth that would change the community forever. In the 1940s, community growth continued to be a sore topic, and one certainly not discussed in polite company. At the center of this storm of controversy, like a lightning rod for the community's anxiety, stood a new breed of professional called the Realtor. banker Thaddeus Bean captured the community's anxiety in his correspondence to an attorney in St. Louis.
Don't know what to make of these folks called realtors. Seem all they do is encourage folks to build and own homes. There's more than a little concern that all these families can't afford to live so high, and a great fear that when this bubble of speculation ends, we will be left holding the bag. Ordered thick steel bars for the windows just last week.
Of course, the bubble didn't burst, and our community continued its steady growth. By the 50s, things were really ready to pop. Parents of what would eventually be called the baby boom generation were brimming with optimism, and new homes and neighborhoods were springing up all over town. In the mid-50s, Columbia's population was about 38,000. The typical dwelling was home to 3.6 people, and the average new home was about 980 square feet. It featured 2 bedrooms, 1.5 baths, and a detached 1-car garage. In the living room, you were more likely to find a radio than a television, and these new homeowners thought they were living pretty high on the hog. By the time the 70s rolled around, the mellow harmonies of the Letterman had faded, and the sounds of rock and roll had given way to disco. If that wasn't disturbing enough, the debate over growth continued to simmer. Columbia's population had ballooned to 65,000, and the typical household had shrunk to 3.4 people. Despite fewer family members, the average home grew in size to 1,500 square feet. Attached 2-car garages were all the rage, while central air conditioning and second bathrooms were high on everyone's wish list. But as our local history shows, things don't stay the same for long in a dynamic community. By the 90s, we were at it again. Columbia's population was approaching 100,000, and the community was becoming a cultural, educational, entertainment, and recreational magnet for mid-Missouri. People didn't just move here because they had to for work. They started moving here because they wanted the things the community had to offer. New homes reflected this new attitude. The average house had grown to 2,100 square feet, even as the average household had leveled off at 3.2 residents. In the 90s, it wasn't unusual to see a 3rd garage door on some new homes, and proximity to nature trails or other recreational opportunities were hot amenities. Today, the community continues to grow. College enrollment is at an all-time high. There's talk of a 3rd high school, and Columbia is poised to become even more of an economic force for the entire region. And the Columbia Board of Realtors? Well, much like changes seen in the average home over the years, the Columbia Board of Realtors has changed to meet the needs of the market. Who are the Columbia Board of Realtors? We are your neighbors. 76% of Columbia's realtors have lived in Boone County for more than 10 years. They have roots in this community and are committed to keeping Columbia a great place to live. We are volunteers. Last year, members of the Columbia Board of Realtors put in over 20,000 hours of community service. From the PTA to Habitat for Humanity and more, realtors understand the importance of community involvement. We are an economic force. In 2006, Columbia Realtors were involved in real estate transactions that totaled almost $520 million. And that's just one piece of the economic pie. When you include new jobs, construction, materials, and services, the total economic impact on the area in 2006 approaches $1 billion. We are educated professionals. 63% of Columbia Board of Realtors members have earned a bachelor's degree or higher, and we will log over 4,000 continuing education hours this year. Realtors understand that the more we know about the complexities of the real estate industry, the more insight and expertise we can offer our clients. We are involved. Realtors care deeply about what happens in this community. 98% of the Columbia Board of Realtors are registered voters and are actively involved in shaping the future of Columbia. We are the American dream. Realtors play an important role in one of the most significant events of many people's lives, buying their first home. We help educate buyers about neighborhoods, schools, and businesses, as well as offer knowledge about financing options and opportunities that can make the dream of owning a home a reality. Who are the Columbia Board of Realtors?
We are educators.
We are PTA members.
We're athletes.
We are bikers.
Music lovers.
Friends. We are gardeners.
Volunteers.
Voters. We are mothers.
Entrepreneurs.
Experts.
Fundraisers.
We are communicators.
Grandparents.
Little League coaches.
We are Mizzou fans.
Homeowners.
Fathers. Scout leaders.
We are boosters.
Ambassadors.
We are business owners.
Community supporters.
Trail users.
We are your neighbors.
We are counselors.
We are dreamers.
We are professionals.
We are Columbia.